excited show today as we welcome some remarkable reptiles like Turt, this wood turtle, and Wilmington, a corn snake, is going to join us later on the show, and their handler from the Vermont Institute of Natural Sciences. Good afternoon and welcome to Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. We love it when a staff member from VINS comes to the studio because they always bring along an animal that helps us bring the outside in. And we'll get back to the stars of our show, Turt and Wilmington, in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce Myla Wiles. She's an educator at VINS in Quechee, Vermont. Thank you for visiting us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And bringing along some coworkers that are on the move a little bit.
Always very active.
And you guys actually have an event coming up tomorrow, June 22nd, where people can meet Turt and Wilmington themselves. Can you tell me a little about that?
Yeah, it's Remarkable Reptile Day at VINS at our Nature Center. We're encouraging folks to get curious about some of their more scaly, sometimes misunderstood neighbors, our reptiles. And we're going to have presentations all day from VINS folks, so these reptiles, as well as some from outside our facility from other local educators who want to get people excited about reptiles.
And some people, maybe our more squeamish viewers, might have already turned the TV off, but what are some myths that you can help us bust about reptiles?
Yeah, there's a lot, but just a few that we can kind of cover right now. Some that might help some people who are feeling a little uneasy about reptiles might be that, first, they aren't out to get you. I promise none of these reptiles we have are out to get anybody. Their snapping turtles aren't out to eat your toes when you're swimming in a pond or a stream. And the snakes certainly aren't going to chase you. They want nothing to do with you. You are a big, scary predator. And to them, you're huge. And so they just are a little nervous. And so sometimes when they're moving through their environment, they may move towards you. They may not realize you're a living thing. You're so big to them. And some of the other fun things, especially about turtles, is you may have seen cartoons where turtles take off their shell at the end of a long day. They can't actually do that. Their shells are made of their ribs and their bones. And so just like you can't take out your spine at the end of a long day, they can't take off their shells.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Though some days I think I've wanted to.
Yes, yeah. Definitely.
And what kind of role do reptiles like this play in their environment?
Yeah, so reptiles are a huge part of our environment, and it's taken scientists a long time to really figure that out because they're kind of secretive. It's kind of special when you see a turtle basking on the side of a pond or wandering through the woods. And snakes, right? They're really good at hiding, and so figuring out their role has taken some time as compared to, say, birds and mammals and a lot of other animals that people really like. But essentially, they are part of the food web. They are part of the ecosystems. They eat other things. They are eaten themselves by other things. So they're an integral, central part of our ecosystems.
All right, we're going to meet Wilmington, the corn snake, in just a second. But first, can you introduce us to Turt here? Tell us a little about him.
Yeah, Turt is a wood turtle. She is 48 years old, we believe. She was actually brought to a wildlife rehabilitator in Pennsylvania after being struck by a car. So if I turn her around, on the back of her shell, she has this kind of scar right here from where her shell actually cracked. She actually broke those bones when she was struck by a car. And thankfully, these folks knew that they could help this turtle. They brought them to a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. They were able to help that bone mend and heal so that Turt is 100% again. But being at that time, this was, the 70s and 80s, and we said, well, we don't know how well this turtle would survive. We don't know if this is going to have long-lasting effects on her reproduction later on. And so they kept her in captivity to be an educational ambassador. They can teach folks that if you see turtles out in the wild crossing a road, slow down. If it's safe to do so, kind of pull off to the side and help that turtle in the direction that it's going across the road.
And are wood turtles native to Vermont?
Yeah, wood turtles can be found all over Vermont. They're kind of native to the Northeast specifically. And they're really cool. They actually don't spend the entire year in the water like our pond turtles, like painted turtles and snapping turtles do. They actually take to the land during summertime. They actually wander around in fields and things during the summer, looking for things like slugs and berries and all sorts of different things to eat. And in winter, they go back to the streams, little streams and small rivers across the state, and bury themselves into the mud bank and hibernate for the winter.
All right, well, let's give Turt a rest. I think she's tired of not getting any traction on this table. And of course, our next guest is a corn snake, and you said these aren't native to Vermont.
Yeah, corn snakes are not native to Vermont. They are native to North America, specifically the southeast. They can be found all the way from eastern Texas along the coast down to Florida and up a little bit into kind of Virginia and even a little bit into New Jersey. But in captivity, these snakes are incredibly commonly kept as pets. They're actually the second most common snake species kept in captivity, second only to the ball python, which is also pretty common. And these guys are related to other species of snake called rat snakes. They are very, very common, and they're very good at climbing. So I'm kind of holding the snake up here, and he can climb around. He might want to explore the table a little. But they climb really, really well, and they are also incredibly docile. They like to hang out. Because he was raised in captivity his whole life, he's an amazing ambassador for all snake kind to folks who might be a little bit nervous about them.
So are corn snakes venomous?
They are not venomous. I would not be holding a venomous snake in my hand in front of you right here and right now.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
These snakes are not venomous. They don't have any venom. How they catch their prey is they catch kind of small things. So people may have heard of constricting snakes like pythons and boas. They're much larger and muscular because they need to constrict their large prey. And so these guys, not as much. They're not catching very large things, usually small rodents and things when they're young, even bugs and stuff. And so they simply rely on the strength of their jaws and eating that thing as fast as they can.
All right.
Yeah.
And how did Wilmington end up at VINS?
Yep, Wilmington ended up at VINS because we've partnered with the Southern Vermont Natural History Museum previously. They come and do special events like Reptile Day with us many times. And they had a pair of corn snakes that they bred in captivity and had a bunch of young little cute baby corn snakes, and they actually donated 2 of those snakes to us so that we could have a reptile ambassadors to help us with our education.
And VINS is known a lot for doing bird rehabilitation. Is that the same for reptiles?
Yep, our rehab is strictly birds at VINS, but there are wildlife rehabilitators across the state who do take in reptiles. And so if you ever find a reptile in need, whether that's a turtle, a snake, you can call your local fish and game officer and ask them, hey, I found a turtle that was hit by a car. I found a snake that maybe was struck by a car and is still alive and might need help. And so that's how you can kind of help them. VINS specifically doesn't have the staff and knowledge to care for reptiles specifically. They're a little different than birds, but you can still find places to help.
And you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but because you don't do rehab, why have reptiles?
Yeah, and it's part of our education. So our mission is to motivate and inspire people to care about the environment. And that includes all of the plants and animals that live there. And reptiles being one of the most misunderstood animals that we have in our local area, it's really important for us to be able to teach people about these guys, get their encounter with a snake. Maybe they're really, really nervous, but maybe an encounter with them in person at our nature center kind of changes their mind, kind of lets them see these snakes in a new light and maybe a new respect for them as well.
And if I'm at home or in the wild and I see a snake or a turtle, what should I do?
Yeah, if it's not in immediate danger, like in the middle of a road somewhere, and you just see them in your backyard, enjoying their natural habitat, enjoy that moment. It's a lucky time, like I said. A lot of these reptiles are kind of secretive, so it's really fun to be able to see them in their natural habitat. And if you have the opportunity, you can even take a picture and submit it to a citizen science study like either iNaturalist, or locally we have the Vermont Reptile and Amphibian Atlas. This is a group of local scientists that are trying to keep track of our amphibians and reptiles and figure out how they're doing. It's really, really hard to study. Unlike with deer or bear, you can't put a collar on a snake. They're just a tube. And so to keep track of their populations, we rely on people's observations. So especially if you see an uncommon species here in the state, definitely report that sighting. Tell someone, a scientist, so that we can figure out where their populations are and where we can help conserve that species.
And if it's maybe hurt or in your home, is there someone you should call?
Yeah, if it's just in your house and you're comfortable, you can just put them back outside.
Sure, okay.
Send them on their way. If they are injured or stuck in some way, definitely call your local fish and game, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. Vermont also lists all of their licensed rehabilitators on their website, but you can look those up if it's not an immediate dire urgency and you have the internet access to be able to call and look them up. Feel free to do that as well.
And we know that Wilmington here isn't venomous, but does Vermont have any venomous snakes?
Yeah, we have one venomous snake, and it is the timber rattlesnake. And it's the most northerly of our rattlesnakes. They occur, like I said, just barely up here in Vermont, specifically in kind of the west of Rutland area. The specific populations and their dens where they overwinter is kind of kept secret so that folks don't go and disturb them. But scientists in the state keep really, really good eye on them because they are listed in Vermont. It's kind of the northerly edge of their range. And so we want to make sure that their populations are doing well.
All right, and this is a snake not native to Vermont. Can you tell me about your non-native population of reptiles at VINS?
Yeah, so corn snakes are not native. The only other reptiles we have at VINS, I mentioned Wilmington's sister actually, Marlboro. She also lives with us, and we have one other turtle. We have a eastern box turtle, which occur in Massachusetts, but don't quite get up here to Vermont. So technically not Vermont native specifically, though with
a close neighbor maybe.
Yes, close neighbors. They could potentially move up here if the winters get a bit more mild. They could potentially live up here. But yeah, pretty close.
And do you see any non-native species that maybe people don't want to keep as pets anymore and turn in?
Not specifically to VINS. There are many facilities across New England that do that. They take in animals that a lot of people, right, they see an adorable baby turtle and they say, oh my gosh, I need to bring this home. This is so cute. And then figure out that that turtle will probably outlive them. Eastern box turtles are very commonly attempted to keep as pets, but they can easily live over 100. So that you might have to write that turtle into your will, and not everyone's equipped to handle keeping a pet for that long.
Sure, turtle estate planning is notoriously
complicated. Yeah, absolutely.
And we even saw that with Turt, a 48-year-old.
Yeah, and she can easily live into her 80s potentially.
Oh wow, so she might outlive us all.
Yeah, she might. Yeah, she's almost as old as VINS.
And of course, we have the reptile program happening tomorrow, June 22nd. And it'll cover anything from turtle shells to how snakes can smell stuff. And so can you tell me a little preview maybe, how does a snake smell?
Yeah, well you can see Wilmington doing it right now. He's flicking that tongue in and out of his mouth, and you probably know snakes have that forked tongue, and so it's kind of shaped like that little V at the end. They go flick it out up and down and put it back in their mouth. And it's essentially like our smelling, but with an extra step. They use their tongue to take in the air particles in front of them, push it to the roof of their mouth where there's receptors for smell, and that's how they smell things in their environment. And their tongue is forked because it helps them with the direction of smells. Think about how close their nostrils are, right? For us too, right? Our nostrils are right next to each other. And so it might be hard for you to tell if a smell is coming from left or right without turning your entire head. So to make it easier,
if only we had forked noses.
They have, yes, exactly. They can flick their tongue up and down and see if that left tine or that right tine has more of that smell on it than the other.
All right, well, thank you for joining us, and thank Wilmington and Turt, of course, but that takes care of our show for today. My thanks to the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX. I'm Julie Whitney. Have a good one.